Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, welcome back to your very, very long, I know, it's one of your longer ones ever flips, but it's going to be okay because we're going to be covering a lot of really, really important stuff, and this flip will be awesome because if you're ever really kind of confused about the transition between these major periods in both England and France that we're going to be getting into, then you'll be able to kind of understand everything a little bit better. All right, so let's go ahead and jump straight into it where we left off, and where we left off in class, we talked about the outbreak of the English Civil War, right? Following the 11 years of tyranny and the crazy rule by Charles and the fact that the Parliament killed his best friend and then he tries to kill 5 Parliament members and then a war breaks out, right? Well, then we talked about our fighting forces, right? We talked about the Cavaliers, we talked about the Roundheads, and then we also discussed the fact that this guy is the leader of said Roundheads, right? And his name is Oliver Cromwell. And just looking at the man, besides the fact that he is not very pretty, and he said that about himself, he actually always referenced his warts and stuff like that, but looking at him, can you tell what religion he is? Can you tell? I hear some people saying Catholic. I hear some people saying Protestant. Well, the Protestant folks, you are right, okay? But he's a special kind of Protestant. Ooh, 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 I see you over there, Ava Boudreaux. He is a Puritan, right? He's a Puritan. Look at this collar, right? Usually whenever you see that collar, it means you are a Puritan, which means that he's gonna be no fun. Now, look, but we'll get to that here in a second. So the Roundheads are gonna end up winning. Whoa. All right, so the Roundheads are gonna end up winning the entire English Civil War, and a lot of this is gonna be due to the fact that Oliver Cromwell is a very intense military leader. At places like the Battle of Naseby and the Battle of Edge Hill, the parliamentarian forces, the Roundheads come out on top. Now, that's not sitting here saying, are we fast forwarding? Yes. Could I easily teach an entire course about the English Civil War and glorious Revolution period? Of course I could. Could very easily do that. But I'm not here to do that, all right? It's a survey course, so we're getting after it. Now, the Roundheads are going to emerge victorious. Now, biggest thing is, though, even after the Roundheads win the Civil War and the Cavaliers surrender and Charles has no one that is ready to fight for him anymore, he still refuses to give in to Parliament. They tell him to sign this document permanently limiting his power. They tell him to do these other things, and he refuses to do it. And so what's Parliament going to do to Charles? So they're going to try him, and they're going to execute him, right? They put him on trial for treason against the crown, and he actually has to sign his own execution order. He is the only leader to ever be executed by his people in European history up until this point. Now, because in 1793, another leader is going to be executed by his people, but that's a different guy. His name is Louis. Now, anyway, they're going to execute Charles. You can actually see this picture from his execution right here. That is him sit here. Look at his head. Look at his noggin being shown to the crowd right there, okay? So that is the death of Charles I. And it's a crazy intense thing that some people said that he wore 2 shirts so he wouldn't shiver because it was a particularly cold morning, that he took a orange that was full of, that was stuffed with cloves, right, which is called like a pom-pom ball or something like that. It's supposed to be very, very fragrant to help him to keep him from passing out. And then apparently he refused to take the hood and he put his head down on the block by himself, and then he is going to summarily have his head removed from his shoulders. Now, really, really interesting stuff about Charles, though, is the fact that he had 2 sons that could have taken over the throne. But England is going to go through a period where they're going to decide that we've had enough of kings. That's right. England went through a period in time. The Commonwealth period lasts from 1649 to 1660, all right? And it's going to be led by none other than your boy, Oliver Cromwell, Mr. No Fun himself, all right? So, which, speaking of, he had himself painted on top of many of Charles's paintings and images and stuff like that. They would take his face and paint it over Charles's face. Now, because Charles doesn't really have a face anymore because he lost his noggin. Now, England with no king, a republic. What are you talking about, Mr. Terry? That's right. There was no monarchy, right? And the entire thing was ran by Puritans. Uh-oh. All right, so this is going to be a problem, right? Now, how are they going to make this accomplishable? How are they going to pull this off, right? How are the Puritans going to become in charge of the largest military and one of the most wealthy nations in the entirety of Europe? Well, they're going to do this by packing the Parliament. Very key phrase that I'm saying right there. Packing the Parliament. Now that Charles is dead because he's been executed for treason and plus because his side lost, now that he's dead, right, you've now got an issue where you have a parliament leading with absolutely no king. Now, this guy, though, Cromwell, is going to step in like a king, right? He's going to start acting a lot like one, and we'll look at some parallels to that here in a second. And the way he starts accomplishing a lot of different things, like banning certain things that most English people would love to have and love to keep doing, like Halloween and drinking and theaters and all this other stuff, he does this due to the fact that he stuffs the parliament full of people that only support him, right? The parliament becomes hyper-conservative because he fires from parliament anyone who doesn't like himself, so Cromwell fires all those people, and he keeps just the people that he likes, okay, that he knows are going to help him, and he calls that his rump parliament, R-U-M-P, his rump parliament, okay? So when you're trying to define this word, the rump parliament, just put on there, it's like the parliament completely structured by Cromwell to initiate his ideas, or something of that nature, right? Basically, the Rump Parliament was just the leftover people that he didn't fire that he knew would vote for the things he wanted to pass. And he passed a lot of stuff, right? He invaded Ireland, killing a lot of Catholic priests and civilians because he believed that the Catholics were the biggest impurity that the land had ever seen. Because remember, he's a Puritan. He was like, his biggest gripe is the fact that he thinks Anglicanism is too Catholic, right? He's going to lead another war against Charles Jr., right? That's right. I said this a second ago. Charles I had two kids. He had two sons, Charles and James, who would have been Charles II and James II if Cromwell had not abolished the monarchy, right? So Charles II is going to try and lead a war to take the throne back, and Cromwell's going to lead a big battle against him, and he's going to beat him multiple times, right? So also, he tried to ban Christmas, all right? So Oliver Cromwell, I can't say this enough, tried to ban Christmas. And he did ban Halloween officially, but he tried to cancel Christmas because he said there's too much drinking, right? He pushed these things called the Navigation Acts on the colonies that we'll come up to later. Put a star next to the Navigation Acts. We will talk about that stuff a little bit later on. Just say to yourself, Navigation Acts, Navigation Acts, Navigation Acts, Navigation Acts. These are important. And what those were was just a set of laws that made it so the American colonies, the 13 colonies at the time, because they were still under British rule, could only trade with Europe on British vessels. They could only send goods back to Europe on British vessels because there was a big trade war going on between the Dutch and the British at the time, right? Now, the Navigation Acts are going to help lead to the American Revolution, but he also closed bars, closed theaters, fined people for not going to Mass, banned sports, banned children's toys. Cromwell is awful. No one wants to be in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth period is terrible. 1649 to 1660 could not have been over soon enough, right? And it did come to a crashing end, right? The only positive thing that Cromwell did in his Commonwealth period was that he allowed the Jewish people to return to Great Britain. Yes, hooray, finally the Jews get a win, right? So he allowed them to return to Great Britain to help stimulate the economy. Now, he turned England also later after he decides this is disgusting. He decides to declare himself the Lord Protector of England, right? Which is basically like a king itself. Do me a favor, write that down there. Lord Protector, right? Lord Protector somewhere down there. So we had no king, but we've got this dude known as the Lord Protector named Oliver Cromwell because he turned England into military districts and used the military like police force and induced martial law. He's just as bad as the kings that came before him. And you can even see it in his seal, right? Look at this right here. See where it says Lord Protector, right? The protector of the crown. This right here is a medallion of Cromwell's reign. Look at Cromwell sitting on a horse with his sword, the cane by his side, and the horse is at a very, very subtle trot, right? This one is the seal, the official letter wax seal of Charles I. Charles on a horse with just the only main difference is the fact that there's a dog underneath him. So just looking at these symbols, Cromwell, his biggest job was to get rid of the monarchy, and he kind of just made himself into a what? A monarch, but a super conservative one that no one actually liked because he banned everything fun. So now look, so the English decide that we are sick of this. So when Oliver Cromwell dies, right, when he dies, they bury him, and they go for about a year more, because Cromwell dies, I believe, in either 1658 or 1659. And he dies, and they bury him. So he's been in the ground for about a year, right? And the Parliament is like, we're sick of this. We want theaters back. We want Christmas back. We want Halloween back. We want everything fun that we used to do back. So they decide, screw the Commonwealth. We're getting rid of it. Let's bring the Stuarts back. Right? That's right. Not kidding. They restored the Stuart monarchy. Here come Charles I's sons. All right? I'm not kidding. All right? So do me a favor and do like this, okay? Some of y'all are probably really confused. You're like, Mr. Jerry, how am I supposed to remember how these people go? I'm so confused. Blah, 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 blah. All right, well, calm down. All of you. All right, so anyway, now look. So if you want a way to remember the British rulers during the absolute period, okay, bang, it goes like this, okay? It goes J for James the First. Then it goes C for Charles the First. And then it goes C-R-O-M, so Crom and the Commonwealth, okay? And then it goes C-J. And so if you notice, the Stuarts are mirrored images on the other sides of Cromwell, right? It went James the First, Charles the First, Cromwell and the Commonwealth, Charles the Second, James the Second, okay? So it's like two mirrored images, one side of the other. But obviously, as you can tell, the British people are going to be super happy to bring the monarchy back, right? They're like, yes, let's go. So they entered this period known as the Restoration, because they're like, we're not a republic. This is Great Britain. We need a king. We need a monarch. We need a parliament that's powerful. We need all these things. So we got to bring this back, okay? So they decide to bring back into power the guy that Cromwell had been fighting against in the Third English Civil War against this dude named Charles II, the son of Charles, right? Charles Jr. So Charles Jr. comes back, and the people love him. They love him, right? So the people of Great Britain are like, Cromwell was the worst thing ever. Let's bring Charles back. They loved him so much that they called him the Merry Monarch, right? Because he's this guy that apparently loved to party.
My name is Charles II. I love the people and the people love me so much that they restored the English monarchy. I'm part Scottish, French, Italian, a little bit Dane, but 100% party animal. Champagne! Spaniels I adored, named after me too. Like me, they were fun with a natty hairdo. Is today my birthday? I can't recall. Let's have a party anyway because I love 'em all. All hail the King of Bling. Let's sing, bells ring, ding ding. I'm the king who brought back partying. King.
So, as you can see, I'll put the link to that little video down in the description in the bottom. But as you can see, Charles was the Merry Monarch. He's the king that loves partying, right? So, because he loves to party, he loves to hang out, he loves to have courtly sessions, he loves tennis, and he loves women. Now, anyway, so we'll discuss that here in a second. Now, he also, though, is going to have to react to a lot of different stuff, okay? So, first of all, we got an issue with Charles out the gate. One, he's never going to have any viable heirs to the throne, right? He never has sons that can inherit the throne due to the fact that he cheated on his wife constantly, right? So he married a princess from Portugal, and the princess from Portugal was very, very, very young and very, very moral and a very, very good person. And she decides, she's like, oh, I'm Queen of England. This is going to be great. I'm so excited. Yay. But then she meets Charles, and turns out Charles is a very, very, very big fan of other women, right? And he's cheating on her with actresses and singers and other random women all the time. And so she gets so fed up with Charles, but since she's such a strict, die-hard religious Christian, she's like, we're not getting divorced, I'm just going back home. So Charles literally lived his entire life being basically a bachelor, but he was married to someone else the entire time. He had several illegitimate children, but those illegitimate children cannot inherit the throne, right? So that's why we had to say he loves tennis and women, right? So unfortunately, the throne when he dies is going to pass to this guy, James II, right? Now, Charles is also going to have a lot of crazy stuff that he has to deal with, like the Great Plague of London in 1666, the Great Fire of London in 1665, and like he's going to have a lot of crazy things on his plate. He's going to work decently with Parliament, but the biggest thing that Parliament pushes him to do is to get after Catholics, right? He's like, you're going to make it this thing called the Test Act. You're going to make it so no Catholic can ever actually be in the Parliament, da 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 da. And so Charles is really struggling with this because the entire time he was secretly a Catholic. So you got to remember something. These two guys, right, Charles and James were in France when their father was fighting against Oliver Cromwell, right? When the original English Civil War was going on, they were in France with their mother, Henrietta, right? And Henrietta was a diehard Catholic. And since she's a diehard Catholic, she is going to raise her sons to be Catholic, right? And Charles was secretly a Catholic. He actually was baptized a Catholic on his deathbed. And his cousin, Louis the 14th, I'm not kidding, tried to tell him to come out as Catholic eventually, right? He's like, I know you want to be Catholic, man. Just try to help those people out and I'll give you some money to do it, right? So you can see the interconnectedness of all these crowns in this Catholic-Protestant debate, right? Now, he's secretly a Catholic, which leads him to have a very troubled soul, but it seemed to not trouble him too much when he was hooking up with all these random women. But then his brother inherits the throne, okay? James II, the second son of Charles, right? And he is openly a Catholic. And all the parliamentarians are like, oh, God. Like, he inherits the throne because Charles couldn't date his wife for some reason. And, like, he inherits the throne, and he has always been an open Catholic. And the parliament's like, well, we can't disinherit this guy just because he's a Catholic. But it'll be okay. It'll be okay. He's got one daughter, and like she's married to the king in the Netherlands. Well, the king, it's not even the king, it's called the Prince of Orange. He's married to the guy in the Netherlands that's in charge, and he has no sons, so it's not going to be a big deal. And he's old as dirt, so it's not like he's going to have another kid anytime. Oh, no. And then James has a son. Like, out of nowhere, James gets pregnant with his wife, has a son, and Parliament's like, no, this can't be okay. All right, so because they think that now they're going to end up having Catholic monarchs on the throne all the time. Now, what he's going to do, though, is he's going to start trying to openly accept Catholics more. Parliament decides, we've had enough. We've had enough of this, all right? So they decide to drives Parliament saying, oh yeah, thinking Catholics are going to take over, so the Parliament plots to drive them out, right? And what they do is a giant event known as the Glorious Revolution. So we've been leading up to this thing the entire time. So a revolution is a change in power, right? That's what a revolution is. It's when you have one leader and now they're going to be kicked out by their people and another one is going to replace them, right? But this revolution is going to be considered particularly glorious, right? Due to the fact that the Parliament invites his extremely Protestant daughter and wife of William of Orange, who is the Dutch head of state, to come and run James out of town, right? So they run James out completely, and James ends up being fled. He just flees to France, right? Now, James originally thinks he hears of this, and he's like, oh, well, I'll assemble the military. They'll help me keep William of Orange and my daughter Mary from taking the crown from me. And the military refuses to help him. They literally put their weapons down. They're like, we're not helping you, dude. We're not helping you. We don't like you. We don't like the fact that you're trying to bring us back to Catholicism. Get out of here. And James ends up running away on a rowboat to this boat and runs away to France like a little weirdo, like a dog with his tail tucked between his legs. James is gone. And the craziest thing about it is now William is going to bring his fleet. The English refuse to help him, like I said, and he runs away to France, right? And what has just occurred is a revolution, right? A revolution has just happened, but the crazy thing is not a drop of blood was spilled. That's why it's called the Glorious Revolution, because the king was banished out of England without spilling a single drop of English blood. So there's our forcible overthrow of a government, right? So now, then here comes William and Mary, right? William and Mary are going to rule as co-monarchs, right? They're going to come in, and Mary, the daughter of James, the very Protestant daughter of James, comes in and decides that they are going to equally split their power with Parliament, right? They're going to bring in the English Bill of Rights, which is going to guarantee freedom of speech, very free and fair elections, and they are also going to stop at nothing to enhance the powers of the Magna Carta. Yeah, you like that, don't you? All right, so and they're going to usher in the official limited monarchy, right? So the William and Mary transition into the Glorious Revolution is a very important one. And it kind of sums up everything that we've been talking about with James, Charles, attempting absolutism, then everybody being like, we're so afraid of absolutism, we're going to get rid of kings altogether, but then Cromwell's the worst, and then they try to bring back Catholicism, da-da-da-da. But it's kind of an interesting component, and why have we been talking about this? Why have we been talking about England and their attempt at absolutism this entire time? Well, we've been talking about it mainly due to the fact that you have to understand they thought they were going to be able to pull it off. But you can't defeat a constitutional system. Why we talk about England first, where a lot of other teachers talk about England last, I like to show you an example early on about how a constitutional system that already existed in England was going to be the preventive method to keep absolutists from gaining control. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to shift gears and we're going to go into France and we're going to discuss France and the wars of religion and all these other things going on, right? So what you need to do me a favor and do real quick, okay, is you need to jot down the fact that this little area right here so we can get into our new stuff, okay? So we're going to be talking about France in our next class, okay? So do me a favor and jot France down in really big letters, okay? Because now we're going to shift gears. Now we're going to jump all the way back to the 1500s again, but it is important for you to remember that for a very long time, the French were going through their own big kerfuffle, right? So, and we got to talk about France due to the fact that that's going to be the seminal absolutist in Louis XIV, right? He's going to take over, and he's going to build Versailles, and he's going to do all this other crazy stuff, right? Now, you also have to understand, though, France was a perfect setting for an absolutist to take over. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they had very weak kings, right, which we're going to talk about in class, though very weak Valois, right? The Valois kings were, like, very weak, not able to rule. That's all from Philip VI, back when we talked about Philip and Edward in the 100 Years' War. And the French wars of religion are going to divide them so completely that it's going to leave a power vacuum for a king to come in and take over and exert absolute authority, right? So, and it's going to be these people called Huguenots, right? What you need to know before we leave right now, so we can get into class next, is that throughout French history since 1562, since the beginning of the Reformation period, there are now a group of people called Huguenots, right? And these Huguenots are French Protestants. Now, France is a very Catholic country. But these French Calvinist Protestants, the Huguenots, make up 7% of the population, but 40% of the nobility. Now, why would the French nobility begin to convert in the 1500s to this new type of Protestant, this new type of Calvinist, right? Well, they would do this so they could exert more power. Because if you look, 7% of the regular people are Huguenots, but 40% of the nobility. Because the nobility believes that if they convert to Protestant, they'll be able to exert their authority and do whatever the heck they want. And they'll be able to actually just tell the king that, like, oh, I don't have to listen to you because I'm not Catholic, right? So, but here's the problem. The Catholics had the crown, the Catholics had more military, and the Catholics had more money than them. So it's going to lead to an outbreak of several different religious wars, right, known as the French Wars of Religion. All right, so we're going to stop right here. When we come back to class on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to hit the ground running. So come in ready to get after it. All right, we are getting after it. Be ready. I'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good one.